I bought my first house 3 months ago. It was a foreclosure, cheap, outdated but structurally sound. The realtor mentioned the previous owner had died in the home, but she didn't specify where. I didn't ask. The basement was unfinished concrete and exposed beams, mostly empty except for an old wooden chair positioned in the center of the room, facing the wall. I thought it was strange, but I left it there. I wasn't planning to use the basement much anyway. That first week, I'd hear sounds at night, scratching like fingernails on concrete. I assumed it was pipes or rodents in the walls. Old houses make noise. I tried to ignore it. One night around 2 in the morning, I woke up to my dog barking at the basement door. He never barked like that, frantic, desperate. I opened the door and he bolted down the stairs into the darkness. I called for him, but he didn't come back. I grabbed a flashlight and went down. The beam cut through the blackness and I saw him sitting perfectly still in front of that wooden chair. His body was rigid, ears flat, staring at the wall. I walked closer and noticed something I hadn't seen before: faint scratches on the concrete wall in front of the chair. Dozens of them. Thin, deliberate marks clustered together like tally marks. I counted 27. I dragged the chair upstairs the next morning and left it by the curb for trash pickup. That night, the scratching returned. Louder, more insistent. It lasted for hours, always coming from the same spot in the basement. I went down with a flashlight again, and this time I noticed something else. The scratches on the wall had increased. There were now 31 marks. I stood there in the cold, trying to rationalize it. Maybe I miscounted. Maybe the light played tricks on me. But deep down, I knew I hadn't miscounted. Something was adding to them. The next day, I called the realtor and asked how the previous owner died. She hesitated before answering. She told me he'd been found in the basement after 3 weeks. Starvation. Dehydration. The police report said he'd been locked down there, but they never figured out how. The door didn't lock from the outside. There were no signs of forced entry. No evidence of anyone else in the house. They ruled it an accident, maybe confusion, maybe dementia. But the realtor admitted something else. When they found him, he was sitting in a chair facing the wall. His fingernails were gone. I tried to leave the basement alone after that, but the scratching grew unbearable. It would start at sunset and continue until dawn, scraping and scraping in rhythmic intervals. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I went downstairs with a hammer and chisel, determined to break through the wall and see what was behind it. I started chipping away at the concrete, and after an hour I broke through. There was a hollow space behind it, a small hidden room. The air that rushed out was cold and stale like a grave. I shined my light inside. There were more scratches, hundreds of them, covering every surface of the tiny room, walls, ceiling, floor. And in the center, another wooden chair, identical to the one I'd thrown away. On the seat of the chair was a piece of paper, yellowed and brittle. I picked it up. It was a handwritten note, dated 15 years ago. It said, "If you're reading this, you've already spent too long down here. Count the scratches on the wall. That's how many days you have left." I looked at the wall in the main basement. There were 43 marks now. I haven't left my house in 6 days. I tried. I packed a bag, got in my car, and drove to the edge of town. But something pulled me back. An invisible weight, a gnawing compulsion I couldn't explain. I turned around. I came home. Every night I wake up standing in the basement, facing the wall, my fingernails dirty and cracked. I don't remember walking down there. This morning I counted the scratches again. 48. I've stopped trying to leave. I don't think I can anymore. And last night I found myself sitting in that chair. I used to rent an apartment in an old converted house. It was divided into 4 units, 2 upstairs, 2 downstairs. I had a ground floor unit with access to the shared basement for laundry. The basement was damp and poorly lit, but functional. The landlord had installed coin-operated machines down there and told all of us to keep the basement door locked when we weren't using it. He said there'd been break-ins in the neighborhood. None of us questioned it. For the first few months, everything was fine. Then I started noticing things, small things. My laundry would be moved, not taken, just rearranged. Clothes I'd left in the dryer would be folded and placed on top of the machine. I asked the other tenants if they'd touched my stuff. They all said no. I asked the landlord. He seemed annoyed and told me I must have forgotten folding them myself. But I knew I hadn't. It kept happening. Every time I did laundry, I'd come back to find something slightly different. Once, I found a sock that wasn't mine mixed in with my clothes. Another time, my detergent bottle had been moved to the opposite side of the room. I started feeling watched down there, like someone was in the corners where the light didn't reach. I began doing my laundry during the day and staying in the basement the entire time. One evening, I went down to grab a load I'd left in the dryer. It was late, around 10 o'clock. The basement was quiet except for the hum of the old furnace. I opened the dryer and started pulling out my clothes. That's when I heard it, a cough. Quiet, muffled, coming from somewhere behind me. I spun around. The basement was empty. I called out, asking if someone was there. No response. I grabbed my laundry and hurried upstairs, my heart racing. I locked my apartment door and tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. But I didn't believe that. The next day, I went back down with my phone's flashlight, determined to search the basement thoroughly. I checked every corner, every shadow. That's when I found it. A small door behind the furnace, barely visible, painted the same color as the wall. It wasn't locked. I pulled it open. Inside was a crawl space, maybe 3 feet high, extending back into darkness. I shined my light inside. There were blankets, food wrappers, a flashlight, a phone charger plugged into an outlet. Someone had been living there. Someone had been hiding in the walls of the basement, watching, waiting. I ran upstairs and called the police. When they arrived, I showed them the door. They went inside with flashlights and found more. Notebooks filled with handwritten entries about the tenants, about me. They found photos taken through windows, schedules of when we came and went. But whoever had been staying there was gone. The police said they'd patrol the area and told me to keep my doors locked. They never found anyone. The landlord claimed he'd had no idea the crawl space existed, said it must have been sealed off decades ago and recently opened by someone breaking in. I moved out 2 weeks later. I couldn't stay there, couldn't sleep knowing someone had been that close, watching me through the walls. But before I left, I went down to the basement one last time. I wanted to see that crawl space again, to convince myself it had been real. When I opened the door and looked inside, I saw something new. Written on the wall in black marker in shaky handwriting were the words, "I'll find you again." I didn't tell the police. I didn't tell anyone, I just left. I moved across the state, changed my phone number and stayed off social media. But sometimes, late at night, I hear sounds in the walls of my new apartment. Scratching, movement, and I wonder if they kept their promise. My sister went missing 6 years ago. She was 16. The police searched for months, but they never found her. No body, no evidence, no leads. My parents eventually stopped talking about it. I didn't. I kept her case file, kept searching online, and kept calling the detective every few months. Last winter, I got a call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was distorted, mechanical. It said, "Your sister is in the basement." Then it hung up. I tried calling back, but the number didn't exist. I thought it was a prank, but something about it felt too specific, too deliberate. I drove to my parents' house that night. They still lived in the same place we grew up. I didn't tell them why I was there. I said I wanted to check something in the old storage boxes. My dad let me in, confused but not suspicious. I waited until they went to bed, then I went down to the basement. It was exactly how I remembered it. Cluttered, dimly lit, full of forgotten furniture and cardboard boxes. I started searching, not even sure what I was looking for. I moved boxes, checked behind old shelves, lifted tarps off forgotten junk. Nothing. Then I noticed the floor. There was a section of concrete near the back corner that looked newer than the rest, smoother, a slightly different color. I pressed on it with my foot. It didn't feel right. Hollow. I found a crowbar in my dad's toolbox and pried at the edges. The concrete came up easier than it should have. Underneath was a wooden panel, and underneath that, a small space dug into the dirt. My hands were shaking as I pulled the panel away. Inside the hollow was a cardboard box, sealed with duct tape. I opened it. Inside were clothes, her clothes. A jacket I recognized, a pair of jeans, a t-shirt she used to wear all the time. They were folded neatly, almost reverently. Underneath the clothes was a notebook. I opened it. Page after page of handwritten entries, dated over the course of 3 months. They were written by my sister. The first entry was dated 2 days after she disappeared. She wrote, "He keeps me in the dark. I don't know where I am. I can hear people walking above me. I've screamed, but no one hears me." My stomach turned. I kept reading. The entries grew more frantic, more desperate. She wrote about the man who took her. She never saw his face. He would come down once a day, leave food, and never speak. She tried to escape once and he hurt her. She stopped trying after that. The entries eventually stopped. The last one was dated 3 months after she disappeared. It said, "I don't think I'm going to make it. If anyone finds this, tell my family I'm sorry. Tell them I tried." I sat there on the cold basement floor, holding her notebook, unable to breathe. I called the police immediately. They came within the hour. They excavated the entire basement. They didn't find her body, but they found traces, DNA evidence, hair, blood, enough to confirm she'd been there. The detective told me they'd reopen the case, that they'd investigate everyone who had access to the house. I asked him who could have done it. He didn't answer directly, but his eyes flicked toward the stairs, toward the house above, toward my parents' bedroom. I moved out that night. I haven't spoken to my parents since. The police never made an arrest. They said there wasn't enough evidence to charge anyone. But I know she was kept in that basement, just a few feet below where we ate dinner every night. Just below where we watched TV, where we celebrated birthdays, where we pretended everything was fine. I still get calls from that blocked number, once a month. Always the same distorted voice. It never says anything anymore. It just breathes. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear her voice underneath it, whispering my name.